If you've been keeping up with the news today, then you know, unfortunately, as we've been hearing for quite a lot of this week, that the Bank of England has been saying that we are headed for the worst recessions possibly in the entirety of our history. Certainly the worst since we've seen since the 1920s. The UK is headed towards depression. Our entire economy has shrunk so far just in this past year by about 0.2%. And that may sound like a very small amount because, when you say 0.2%, it is quite a small number to a lot of people. But as we said before, when you're talking sort of big countries, we're talking big GDPs, where 1% is like trillions and billions of pounds, even though I know that doesn't make a lot of sense, trillions and billions, but it really is. 0.2% is a huge number. And you've got to put this in perspective because this is money that could be going to the NHS, could be going to social services, could be going to councils to help fund services that you need in your local area. It could be going to infrastructure developments. We've just talked about how Bradford today isn't getting its much needed infrastructure that could add millions of pounds to that city, much needed at this time. And for a government and for a party as like the Tory party that constantly loves to talk about growth, for the past 12 years, they haven't really engaged in growth. They've engaged in a slow growth because they went and made the political choice under David Cameron to follow into austerity. And other problems have flown ever since that, because what have we had? We've had a degradation in services. You look at the NHS with nurses leaving in droves because of the underfunding the NHS has had under the Tories. You look at the fact that the nurses are going to go on strike for the first time since the organisation was founded in its over 100-year history, the National Royal College of Nursing, I believe it is. And it's not just them. I think you've got teachers going on strike. I think there's going to be more local council workers going on strike. All these people going on strike. We are entering a new winter of discontent, one of which cannot be just got out of by saying we need to cut back more. We need to go harder on austerity. Because I worry next week that is what we're going to hear. Now, they're going to try and offset it by saying, oh, look, we're raising taxes here, but there's all these cuts, but don't worry, we're raising taxes. That's what it's going to be tried, and I think has sold us. We're already being primed by people like Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt, if you listen to what they've been saying for the past couple of days. So they're trying to prime the pump and get people ready for this. But I don't think it's going to go over well. And we've already said the problems that Sunak could face from his own party if enough MPs do not like what he tries to sell in this budget. And I've said to you all, I do not think it is fair that we do not get to decide as a country, do we want to pursue this new path of austerity, or do we go with something else? Do we go for a general election and see what the other parties have on offer for us? That could very well be the case. But surprisingly, what I've been always telling you about, the possible full-scale Tory civil war. And by the way, we have seen this when we came up to the two leadership elections that we have seen. We have seen the Tories in open, full-scale skirmish, but they've always quietened down. But those skirmishes have very much continued in the background. And one of the big casualties, and I'm really glad that Liz Truss has been one of the big casualties, hopefully to never, ever return to the front bench. I am really glad that, to be honest, her entire political career is dead, because Liz Truss got there by hanging on. by being a political chameleon, by changing her stripes to whatever she was currently needed to be so that she could climb to the top. And when she finally got there, she crashed and burned, as many people had predicted. But there is one key individual who is also responsible for Liz Truss's and her entire mini budget, which eventually just was too much for our economy to take and sent it into complete meltdown. And that is, of course, Kwasi Kwarteng. And he has been out today, what seems to be at least to try and save his career by, well, throwing Liz Truss under the bus. So let's see what he's had to say about this. But nevertheless, this is quite interesting because we'll come back and comment on what he's had to say here.
So you made the argument that the Prime Minister go slower at the time.
Well, I said actually after the budget that because we were going very fast, even after the mini budget, we were going at breakneck speed. And I said, we should slow down.
And what did she say?
And she said, well, I've only got 2 years. And I said, you'll have 2 months if you carry on like this. And that's, I'm afraid, what happened. And that was something that I said to her in October after the mini budget.
So I suppose you rather wish she listened to you at the time.
Well, it's not. Look, I'm responsible. I'm not going to wash my hands with it. I was Chancellor of the Exchequer. I was also part of the top team. But looking back, I think we could have had a more measured approach.
So there you have it. He was responsible, but he's now trying to distance himself by saying, oh, it wasn't my problem. It was Liz Truss wanting to go fast. But here's the thing. Look back to the videos that we were covering, to the magic of the fiscal event that he was pushing out, that he was putting forward. He was all on board for this. The idea that, oh, no, I just wanted to go slow. Don't believe the hype. This is Kwasi Kwarteng desperately trying to salvage whatever scraps of his career he can try and find. Because he knows full well, like Liz Truss, it could be very well be a decade before he's even allowed anywhere near a front bench position ever again. Hopefully, like Liz Truss, he will never be allowed on the front bench ever again. But the idea that he is trying to distance himself from Liz Truss is completely foolish. It is ridiculous. He was very, very much involved in this entire debacle, this entire shock that has caused such a catastrophe to our economy. Do not let him rewrite history on this. He is responsible. And the other thing, the issue of speed. Why was speed such a necessity about this? Well, I ask you, remember, all of Brexit, all the Brexiteers always talk about how fast Brexit must be done, that we must keep up the pace of this Brexit revolution and reformation, of which both Truss and Kwarteng were part of. And this all goes back to 2016. The second Theresa May came in, all the Brexit ultras came out and said, we must trigger Article 50. We must do it now, not wait and let people catch their collective breath. Because otherwise, if people stop and actually think for a second, they might actually rethink Brexit, which is what has been going on. In all these 6 years, all this harrying to get the harshest possible Brexit as possible has been done at speed for that exact reason, to make people not stop and think about the consequences of what they are about to be doing. And you want a perfect example about how this is continuing? Look no further than the EU Revocation and Reform Bill. By the way, if you haven't done so yet, please do email or write to your MP telling them to put that bill in the bin, because it is going to be an absolute disaster. That is another classic example of the Brexiteers trying to do things at speed. And even some Brexiteers are coming out and going, yeah, that bill's quite bad, so please do write to your MP about that. But that's why. This whole idea that, oh, it was too fast. No. This was the entire doctrine of the Brexiteers. It was, since day one, day after the referendum, shock and awe. keep on pushing, keep on pushing, keep on pushing until we get what we want. And they were in a minority pushing for this. And it's been proved as we've gotten even further from the referendum that people would even eventually stop and take a breath and think about what the UK has done. And we are now starting to see people think for a second about the consequences that Brexit has actually brought to the UK. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me a Coffee, where you can, well, buy me a coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.